be here. I was sitting here trying to think of something smart and really philosophical to say about how proud I am to be here. I grew up in a little dairy farm in southwestern Sydney, and now I get to come to magical places like this and listen to presentations like that. So it's very heartwarming to be able to share the room with everybody. And I think before I do my talk, one of the reasons I do explore, we did this event last year and had a vision for what next year will look like, is not to look at slides, is to sort of look at people. So ladies from Wollongong, I now have a connection in the US. The more I can talk with you and look you in the eyes, the more I can learn, because I need to learn things. You have problems, I might have some solutions, we can exchange ideas, and then hopefully we can all progress. And I know in the audience there's some nursing students here from IIHS and faculty. And walking into this building is just a straight out inspiration. So what you're doing here is exciting, and we really hope that we can be partners and understand how technology and international relationships can grow the work that you have. So please, at any time, just interrupt me, because I babble and can be a bit boring, okay? And I like exchange, questions, talking. So feel free to put your hand up and question me on what I'm talking about. So a lot of the original talk there was about leadership and emotional intelligence and understanding innovation. Now, I'll be honest, in Australia, I hate the word innovation, because companies put it on their mission statement, they put it on the wall, and you know what? I'm a registered nurse. Very rarely when I'm at work do I feel innovation. I feel long shifts, I feel sadness for my patients, and I feel tired from the work that I do. Innovation has been electronic medical records and digitizing healthcare. And again, if I'm honest, as a nurse, it's probably made my job a bit harder, and I feel more distant from my patient. To me, that's not innovation. That's just a business trying to be more efficient. So what is innovation in nursing? What is innovation in our job, and how do we manage change? This is something I get a bit fascinated about. Make sure the sound is on.
Line to a vast new factory on the outskirts of Detroit called Highland Park. He declared the company would soon achieve his ambitious goal of producing 1,000 Model Ts a day.
Henry Ford building the first Ford Model T.
His whole business model is to sell a cheap product. And the way that you create cheap products is by making more of them in a shorter amount of time.
While Ford was able to make the machine parts quickly, assembling the cars bogged down the process.
A friend of Ford's once compared him to a kind of boxer, tiptoeing and dancing around the factory floor all the time, thinking about what could we do here, what could we do there, how could we change the production process to make the car better and cheaper and bring out even more of them.
While they're groping about for improvement, someone begins to think about the meatpacking plants where the carcass of a hog or a cow is hung on a conveyor and moves through the plant past meat cutters who cut pieces off the animal. And what if we turn that around? What if we put in some machine that we want to assemble and we move it past people and we have people put things on?
Ford's team tried out the idea in the flywheel magneto department, where the device that generated electricity for the ignition system was made. Rather than having one person build a coil at a time, a supervisor broke down the individual tasks into a sequence driven by a conveyor. The new system reduced the time it took to make a magneto from 20 minutes to 13 minutes, 10 seconds.
And then somebody says, well, if it works on magnetos, what about transmissions? What about axles? What about engines? Productivity goes way up. Time to produce a car goes down. And they realize we're really on to something.
binary system, the record time for assembling a car had been 12 hours and 13 minutes. Using the assembly line process, it took 1 hour and 33 minutes. By the fall of 1913, Ford had established the first automobile assembly line in the world and controlled nearly half the American car market.
In 2 years, they reduced the time of a car to assemble in nearly 10 hours a day. There was no microchip, there was no virtual reality headset. If you look at the warehouse, it was people working together to get a job done, doing simple things. That's what nurses are good at, because there's lots of us. There's lots of us. That, to me, is innovation. Systems, people, working towards the right goal. But the biggest takeaway, and I think walking around IIHS yesterday, we've got an innovation entrepreneur hub, was the way that she described Henry Ford. He's like a boxer, walking around the manufacturing plant, looking for things to improve. How can we do this? How can we do that? That's the drive. That's what we just talked about in the last lecture, about having the nation take the idea, build the research, having it from within. If you don't have a vision and you don't have partners, then all you have is an idea. And that's something I struggled with as an entrepreneur. So I've been nursing for 20 years, and now running a business, I have to learn accounts and partnerships, business plans, investors. I've got to rely on other people to help me. But these events, what we're here for today, is not to listen to me. You're going to forget what I said in 2 months. You might remember 30 seconds of what I said in my presentation. It's to talk to each other, to follow up emails, because this is happening in the world. Technologies are progressing so fast, and it's hard to even understand what they are and what they can be used for. But the problem we have now is they're all coming together, and we have this convergence of technologies. So we have artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and Google Gemini. We've got Meta making these virtual reality headsets. And who's used a VR headset in the room? Okay, so maybe under 10 people. But they've been around for 20 years. Pilots now fly in flight simulators as a part of their OSCE assessments every year. They can change the wind, they can change the rain, it can be night and day. That's an immersive environment, which is a replication of virtual reality. So the question is, can a nurse or a doctor change the patient's condition? Can they change the drugs that they're giving and provide these immersive environments to test their skills and their knowledge? So we have to understand what they are as independents, and then we have to understand what convergence means. But the most important thing is we have to understand what our problems are, because we can't force a solution if we don't understand our problems. Does anybody know what that is, quickly? Besides looking expensive. It's one of the world's first operational quantum computers. So I'm going to talk about AI and I'm going to talk about VR. But the truth is, in about 5 or 6 years, these are going to be commercially available. So I'm going to say, oh, you need a technology roadmap for your virtual reality. This stuff is going to move so fast, it's going to be so hard to keep up. In 2019, 5 years ago, they turned this thing off, made it work. They were able to do as much computation in 200 seconds that your desktop computer would take 10,000 years to complete. So their ability to drive the speed of computation, we can't even fathom what's possible with that amount. But we are at the dawn of a time of technology where in the 90s we had a personal computer. Can you imagine being a school teacher, walking into the classroom with this big PC and putting it in the room with kids going crazy, trying to figure out what this thing is? I would have needed a big stick to keep the kids away. But that disruption then formulates, put your hand up if you spend more than, say, 2 hours away from your mobile phone in 24 hours. 1 hand. We have a mobile computer. We have the world's knowledge at our fingertips. We're essentially cyberkinetic beings because we are connected to the internet. I've seen people here already this morning. You've looked at your phones. You've been here an hour and a half. But we are connected online. And it jumps up and grabs our attention. It's just the world that we live in. These computers, and what I'm going to talk about today, is no different. They're wearable computers, otherwise known as spatial computers. So take your mobile phone and put it on a pair of Ray-Bans. That's essentially what spatial computers are going to be. And then inside that, we're going to have some AI to do the work. So there's this clip on the internet from Meta's conference this year where a young girl is in France. It's in France. She walks through a forest. While she's walking through the forest, she's from the US. There's some signs in French language. But her glasses can real-time translate the language to her. You know, they say toilets ahead, or there's a cafe coming up on the left. I could put a pair of glasses on Dr. Kitsuri now, and on myself, and we could speak Sinhalese to English in real time. That's happening today. You can buy those glasses right now. They're not cheap. But we can do that right now. That's fundamentally amazing. We could all go to Japan and do a nursing conference. As long as we all had our glasses on, every single person in the room, despite your origin, can collaborate and share and connect with people. Do you know how powerful that is? That's worth thinking about. The human species has lived in tribes, and now we're going to break down language, which is one of the highest identifiers of our culture, to be able to speak together. Fascinating. Convergence. It's one of my strongest messages. Don't worry about VR. Don't worry about AR. Don't worry about quantum computers, because you need to worry about all of it. How is it going to work? What are you going to do? How will the students use it? What will the business do? How are we going to deploy it? What's it going to cost? Sounds stressful, doesn't it? But it's good. I think there's a delegate from the Maldives. We've got Australia. So what you're going to see this afternoon in some of the workshops is in some of these simulations, you could put a headset on and do something extremely technical, like put in a PICC line. This is a long line that goes in and you give chemotherapy drugs. But one user could be doing the simulation, and another user could be on the other side of the world, standing next to them. So they can assess a patient, go through equipment setup, insert something technical like a PICC line, and at the back end of it, there's all this learning data to tell you how you performed. Now think about that, because at the moment, we stand around a piece of plastic in one room. So being able to deliver, stand next to an expert and do training at scale is profoundly different as a new way of business to what we do today. Does anybody know the story of who this is? A Jane Doe, I don't know what they say in France, but they called her Annie. She was found in the Seine River in Paris. She was pulled out of the river. They didn't know how she died, and it was a tragic scene. And back in Paris, they used to make these face masks. They called them death masks. This is Resusci Annie. It's one of the first mannequins that was ever made for healthcare training. So we long live Annie within the mannequin. And there's a few companies now trying to understand how they can translate her story into a virtual reality simulation, which is pretty cool. So psychotherapy, like the gentleman before me, rehabilitation with allied health. Who's in allied health here? Is any hands? We've got nutritionists, any physiotherapists? Yeah, great. So doing rehab, imagine you're rehabbing from a stroke and you're trying to learn how to move your arm again. In virtual reality, you can have a headset on and somebody can be throwing you a ball virtually and you have to catch it. But in the program, it knows your range of motion of your arm and it can go 1 degree higher for a week. And then the next week, it'll go another degree higher. So after 6 months, you're starting to catch a ball as strong as you can because you're gamifying the process. You don't even know that you're doing your therapy. So there's some very clever ways. My favorite one, because I'm an intensive care nurse, so I did heart-lung transplantation most of my career, is when you get extubated after your surgery or from being sick in intensive care, you have to do respiratory physio. So you put the headset on and you have to pick up a bow and arrow. And when you pull the arrow back, you breathe in. And then you shoot, and you try and hit a target. There's birds and chickens and things. But the idea is it's a game, and immediately you play that game for 20 minutes. But currently in the ICU, it's boring, you're tired, you'll only do it for 3 or 4 minutes. So you're doing your physiotherapy passively, but you're enjoying it. And you're doing it regularly, which is a fundamental change to how we do it at the moment. So impact on patient care is huge. We've just set up a program with Queensland Health. Queensland's one of the largest states on the east coast of Australia. And the nursing teams are using the headsets for meditation. So it's for mood regulation. So if you're looking after a psychiatric patient, a couple of depressive patients, after 5 or 6 hours, if they're a bit combative, that can be really mentally draining on the staff. So they've allocated a calm area where they can go and just spend 10 minutes, have a cup of tea, and do some meditation in an immersive environment, and it feels like they're somewhere else. There's a forest, there's different scenic sites, and so far so good. They're saying it's quite a benefit to the staff to be able to relax and shed off the morning of the shift. Education is interesting. How do we learn? I don't think we really know the answer to that. What's the best form of teaching? Put your hand up if you think you know the best way of teaching. It's a fascinating thing about education. We have universities, we have high schools, but the fact of the science of how we learn is still fundamentally, people think there's learning styles, and that's relatively being debunked now. There's active learning, there's kinesthetic learning, there's all these different theories. But the science of learning is so fascinating because we're all different humans. We come from different cultural backgrounds, we have different things going on in our life, and balancing all that out to have one task and to be better at that task over time varies. The difference with these technologies now is we're going to be able to measure you. So if I was putting in a cannula, I could measure the distance between your fingers in virtual reality. I can measure how far away they are from your hand. I can measure your pupils, your head positioning, everything. I can measure your language. So if you do that task 40 or 50 times, with that data set, I can test if you're getting better or you're getting worse. So if I need to go to the toilet and I'm stressed, and I've been busy, which I have been, I'm going to be stressed. But if I do it 30 or 40 times, the next time I do it, I might be hungry, but my stress is going to come at a different time. It might be at the end of the simulation because I want to get out of there and go for lunch. So being able to measure your stress over time is critical. So in 5 years, I think Dr. Kitsuri will be deploying an objective number to your nursing students. So if there's nursing students in here doing a 3-year program, be careful because this is coming for you, is that there'll be an objective number, things like respiratory assessment, urinary catheterization, what else? Resuscitation. Because of the data that we can get, we'll be able to say you're a 75 out of 100 because you did X, Y, and Z in a spatial environment. And then your employer will know that. So then they will be able to track your skill attainment over time to give you the better jobs for those specific skills. It's kind of scary, but it's fascinating. I think you have to hit play on this one, yeah. Just start it again and turn it up if you can. Just go back and turn it up. Can you just stop the video, take it back to the start and turn it up? So this is just an example of how fast the technology is moving. Again, this video was made 2 or 3 years ago.
I'm not really sure why I'm here. I remember waking up and asking those, why do you want to make errors instead of why? Those real ideas really are what is really becoming. I'm Keanu Reeves. Over 20 years ago, I first did her.
Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Moss, and I played Trinity in The Matrix films. 20 years ago, we asked ourselves how long it would be before faces and bodies could be changed as easily as we change clothes.
We wondered, what would identity mean in a completely digital world?
What would reality mean when a world we can build feels as real as our own?
photorealistic. It's hard to differentiate between what is real and what is not. It was made 2 years ago. We're releasing a product in January that has photorealistic avatars in VR environments. They have mannerisms, they have verbal cues like so you'll be talking to them and they'll stumble over their words, they'll say they'll get confused a little bit, they'll regather their thoughts. What we can do in the training space with the technology, I don't know. You are the ones that are going to do the innovation. The technology will come to you as junior nurses, junior allied health staff, faculty, and how you apply that into the real world is what we were talking about in the first lecture about consolidating research and understanding how we measure it, how we test it, and how we plug it into the system to then scale it. Has anybody ever seen a photorealistic avatar? One of the workstations today, I've created some ChatGPT modules. They're all voice function. So in one of the workstations, you're going to do virtual reality, but you're also going to do AI. So you're going to sit down and have a conversation with ChatGPT, and you're going to try and teach it something. So it's a choose your own adventure story where you're going to try and teach it about AI. You're going to have to use your language. And I bet that you'll find you just start talking to it, and it's talking back. And after 3 or 4 minutes, you can close your eyes and be talking to somebody. And if you put a face onto that voice, we aren't going to know what's real and what's not. So then you think about that, about training an experienced nurse about grief and loss. Most of my challenging conversations in my career were with 16-year-old girls who had cystic fibrosis because they needed to have a lung transplant. So they'd be in the hospital, it'd be midnight, somebody has died, and we have a pair of donor lungs coming in, and the mum and dad would come upstairs and they'd say, it's on, it's happening. Everyone's excited, but also everyone's scared. Right, let's get you washed, let's have a shower. Those conversations are so brittle. You know, they could fall apart at any moment. Parents think they're going to lose their daughter. It's a powerful thing. So being able to practice these conversations in the real world. Ooh. Imagine talking to an AI about having a lung transplant. But at the back end of the AI, we can hit keywords, how many times you said their first name. All the principles of that conversation can be taught through repetition. Because the next time we could give you a 55-year-old gentleman who's having a heart transplant. But it's exactly the same fundamentals. And we can do that repetitively. And communication is nursing. You know, traditionally, that's what we did. We're there to advocate for the patient alongside the doctor and their treatment plans. So open your imagination to how scary that could get. You could have a whole family of avatars. You could have one in your house. How am I going to take care of these plants? Yeah, and the avatar will be able to help you with that. This is something I get really passionate about. So I have done an innovation fellowship at the Ohio State. And in Australia, in innovation, nursing is in the Australian College of Nursing. I won't talk out of school, but it's not there. There's no infrastructure, there's no support, there's no educational programs. To come in here and see that there's a nursing entrepreneurship hub blows my mind. I don't really see that too often in Australia. Because I don't think nursing students get promoted to build business models or to be commercial. But if you don't have industry, innovation is so slow. Academia needs research papers. There has to be agility with ideas. We have to disagree. I love disagreeing with academics. Me and Carly, we disagree all the time. So the idea with industry is to test ideas, is to push. It's like essentially what Dr. Kisser is doing. And then industry goes, well, hang on, what's the evidence? Let's take a moment. And then the bureaucracy, and then it's 2040 and nothing's happening. Just so we have to work through it as a collective, as a society. Does anybody know what this is? Has everybody been to Massachusetts? Is any anaesthetists in the room? Last question. Does anyone know what ether is? Yeah? What's ether? It's an anesthetic. 1842. Let's think about that. 1842. It's a long time ago. A couple of doctors had an idea. They wanted to give patients ether so when they cut them, the patient wouldn't feel any pain. So you know what the doctors did? They spent 4 months taking ether themselves. That was their research. So one would take it, the other one would be with them. They'd take it together, they'd change the doses. They were experimenting. This is what we do in research, right? There's a guy called, what's his name? Took the first X-ray, Röntgen, Wilhelm Röntgen, German. He took the first ever X-ray. The first ever image of an internal hand was his wife's hand, had her wedding ring on. He would take X-rays of himself at his house, radiation. Mary Curie died of radiation because she used to take it home as well as her husband. This is how everybody experimented. These are frontier people. This is what they call the ether dome. It was the first ever location where they did a surgery and cut a tumor out of a gentleman's neck. It was a vascular patient. They gave him a dose of ether, and they literally just cut this thing out of his neck over 6 hours. And he woke up, and he didn't have any pain. And that is how humans started to have surgery. So the ether dome, the concept of the ether dome, how do we create a place to test ideas? Because we have to take risks. That's how we grow. How do we build an ether dome for nursing? Where do we go? Who does it? What do we test? How do we test it? Who's going to take the risks? I feel like it's me being in the industry. The universities will dial that back. It's tricky. But we have to build an ether dome. We have to make it better. Like Dr. Kitsuri said, I think in Australia by 2035, there'll be more nurses retiring than there are graduating because of the aging workforce. How are we going to deal with that when the total population of the country is exponentially going up? We need an ether dome. We need some clever ideas to manage the world. Okay, I'll finish up. We're going to have some morning tea. We have gone from the Model T to a Tesla Cybertruck. And I just seen this morning that Elon Musk has announced that he's got a new Tesla bike. Don't know if you've seen that. But this is a truck powered by electricity. It goes faster than most unleaded vehicles. It is amazing. It weighs something like 2 tons. The technology in it's incredible. So it wasn't about building cars for Henry Ford. It was about transforming an industry, the innovation, to change the world. And before him, my dad went to school on a horse. So this is literally, 40 years ago. He used to ride his horse to school. He finished in year 9 when he was 15 and got a job in the coal mine. So the conversion to cars isn't even that old. We're talking 100 years. And in Australia, we're still riding horses. What I talk about is not about technology. It's not about getting a new computer or using ChatGPT on your phone. It's not about that at all. It's about new ways of doing business to make a better learning experience for those that need it. It has to be iterative. If I told you what my schedule was in the last week, oh my Lord, I would give you anxiety. I've been a busy boy. I've been all over Australia, I've flown here. I think I've only had about 3 hours sleep the last couple of nights because I've been delivering projects in the US. And the reason that we've been doing that is everything just keeps changing, it keeps evolving. We've got bigger research programs, we've got new customers, people are using the technology in a different way. So the whole idea is to work together to grow it together. All right, this is the last part. I'm in Sri Lanka to come and collaborate with you. People from Finland, Maldives, all over the world. It's pretty amazing. How are we going to build our assembly line in our ether dome? Because what do we need? I think that's where we start first. What are the problems that we share that we can work together to solve? And then we can build relationships.